Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Fellowship. Today our teacher is Heather Sundberg. Heather began teaching meditation in 1999. She has completed the 4-year Spirit Rock Insight Meditation Society teacher training. Beginning her own meditation practice in her late teens, for 20 years plus, Heather has studied with senior teachers in the Insight meditation and Tibetan traditions and has sat 1 to 3 months of retreat every year for the last 15 plus years. She is a teacher for Mountain Stream Meditation Center in the Sierra Foothills and also teaches classes, day-longs, and retreats nationally, especially at Spirit Rock Meditation Center. So, Heather, let me give you the spotlight. Welcome and thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you all. Missed you. Welcome to the people who I haven't met yet, who are new. It's funny. Makes me realize how long I've been visiting you all once or twice a year. Because you can add at least a good decade to everything on that bio now. We do get older. So I realized, it's probably been closer to 15 years that I've been coming through, getting the honor to be in presence with you. I'm actually feeling a moment of vulnerability. I realized I actually haven't given a public teaching, a public reflection, even on a Zoom screen in almost 4 months, which those of you that know me well know that in my prior life, pre-COVID, I was traveling around the world, around the US and Europe, teaching continuously. So it's been a real different way of being for so many of us, right? So I've been spending quite a bit of time this year actually in retreat at home. Offering my heart and presence and awareness to the collective field that I just feel like needs so much help. And then coming out and offering the humble service that, I'm uniquely suited to offer. And isn't that what we're doing? We're spending a lot of time with ourselves, and then we're offering the service that we're uniquely suited to offer. So anyway, that's my preamble. That's my getting my heart there with you. And if I name the vulnerability I feel, then I can just launch in the joy that I'm also feeling this morning. So I actually chose this week to completely disconnect. I figured the election results would take a while, and I just wanted to really, it's not like the best choice. It was just the right choice for me to disconnect and really, really offer my presence and my prayers to our country, no matter what was going on, without knowing the details, without getting hooked by the reactive patterns as, the details can do. So to take a couple days. So when I went back online on Saturday and discovered that so many of you probably been biting your fingernails all week, and I literally went online about 2 hours after the result came in. It's like, here we are. And it also just feels important to name that I'm going to give some reflections just from my own heart because I see, I experience the Dhamma in everything. Like everything to me is a Dhamma teaching. Everything for me is a teaching about truth and heart and the awakening process. And I know it's true for many of you. So I just want to offer some reflections on some of the wisdom that was shared last night from our president and vice president-elect. But I also want to acknowledge that I hope everybody voted. However we voted across the ticket, there might be some disappointment. We might not have gotten everything that we wanted. And different people, that would be different, races, different folks. But just to acknowledge like that holding and wholeness of the joy. So I'll just speak from my own heart, the joy that I'm feeling, like, got this feeling of like hope. I've been feeling a lot of that this year. It's been a little low on hope. And then at the same time, grief. Because there's so much loss, and there's so many pieces of our structures that are broken, that need help. And they have needed help for a long time, and they still need help. And that wholeness of heart that can really meet, like, yeah, hope, joy, connection, empowerment, like grief, loss, despair. And for me, actually, that's the heart of my Dharma. That's been the heart of my Dharma all the way through my path. It's like that wholeness and awareness that nothing is left out. And I know that for myself, the more that nothing is left out, the more I can be with you or whoever I'm being with, or kind of land my gaze on the structures that we live in wholeness. Hold a broader view, hold a longer view. I'm not saying anything that we don't know. It takes so much patience, so much courage, so much heart. Part of why I've been teaching less publicly is just this sense of like, even the modality of teaching is so hierarchical. One person speaking, I really want to hear from everybody who wants to share at the end, but it just feels so hierarchical, and it just feels like such a time of we to me. So I just haven't felt like I've had or needed so much to say from like the seat of the one voice. More interested in dialogue these days. So did you all listen to the acceptance speeches last night? I'm looking for some feedback and facial expressions here. You know how Zoom is. You get those Zoom faces. I might say to you at some point, all right, take off the Zoom face. Show me what's going on in there. How you feeling? Yeah, so maybe not everybody did, and that's fine. It's all online. And of course, you don't need to listen. But I just wanted to reflect on a few lines actually from these speeches. Starting with Kamala Harris's opening line from the late John Lewis. Democracy is not a state, it's an act. And like to hear, this is my heart, right? It's like to just see a woman standing there, and a woman from South Asian and African American descent, standing there and opening her speech, like that just really moved me. And immediately, because what my mind does is translate everything into my own language and my own understanding, which is what we do. That's how we make meaning and connect with things. I just thought, yeah, democracy is not a state, it's an act. And then the thought came, enlightenment is not a state, it's an act. Awakening is a process that we're moving through, that we're connecting with, that we're relating with, that we're living. The Zen tradition, one of my favorite definitions of awakening or enlightenment is an appropriate response. And it's not an appropriate response once, it's responsive. It's at the heart of our spiritual paths, whether it's Dharma, meditation, and all of our other spiritual paths. I just think that responsiveness is so key. And then Kamala went on to acknowledge times are challenging. And it just evoked in me this memory of being 17, 18 years old, and the first time I heard the Four Noble Truths. And maybe if you're longer term in the Dharma and you know what I'm talking about, I'll give the headlines. But, maybe you now remember the first time you heard that teaching, or some teaching that really, really named to you the truth of how it is. And I just remembered in the moment that she said, times are challenging. It's like, yeah, being so young, not going to go through my whole history, but having gone through so much pain and suffering of body and heart and mind and world, even by that young age, and having whoever was teaching say the Four Noble Truths, which are times are challenging. First Noble Truth, it isn't easy being a human being living a life, and we all know it. And to name that truth allows us to open into that difficulty instead of wall off, brace, and push away. It's not easy being a human being living a life. Second Noble Truth, the basic cause of our dis-ease is struggle. Third Noble Truth, peace is possible. And all these years when I've shared that as an invitation into a deeper truth, I've always held it as peace is possible with this body, with this orientation, with this age, with this family of origin, this work or lack of work, this country, peace is possible. Always held it that way. Such a bold and challenging invitation. And then the fourth noble truth, there's a path to peace. There are tools, including cultivating our basic integrity, the path of meditation, and really acknowledging the seeds, the growing seeds of wisdom in our being. So yes, times are challenging. There are joys and there are sorrows. We continue to be in a field of collective trauma. This is something I've been practicing really deeply with this whole year, is watching the wider patterns of collective trauma. It's really helpful perspective because we have this tendency, as we all know, to, when we're at our most reactive, take things extremely personally in a way that doesn't serve us. I'm not saying the personal isn't valuable, but in a way that doesn't serve us and others when we're at our most reactive. And then we just have a way of orienting everything towards ourselves, which is part of our human conditioning. Is okay. But to have the collective trauma or the collective field perspective gives us this we sense of like, yeah, I'm going through cycles of, denial, the despair, numbness, anger, fear. So is the collective. Whose is it? No. I'm sure I'm not the only one when you go up to do your once in a while shopping or whatever you do and you go, oh yeah, today in here it feels like this. When I was here, so I live in the country, so I seriously go out like once every couple weeks, once a month. So I go to the grocery store and just check out the field. What's the field like? What's the we sense? Oh, now everyone's really connecting because it's scary. Now everybody's really numb and avoidant. Now everybody's pissed off and you can feel it, and it just gives this sense of like, oh, there's the personal experience, there's the collective experience. There's the me and the we. And, Kamala also, let me just quote her. She said, I know times have been challenging, especially the last several months, the grief, sorrow, pain, worries and the struggles. But we have also witnessed your courage, your resilience, and the generosity of your spirit. For 4 years, you marched and organized for equality and justice for our lives and for our planet. And then you voted and you delivered a clear message. You chose hope and unity, decency, science, and yes, truth. So that resilience, that generosity of spirit, this meeting of the inner and the outer, if we look at the Satipatthana Sutta, which is the teaching on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, right? So mindfulness of body, of feeling tone, of mind states, and what I'm going to call the 4th in this moment is like a awareness of the patterns of how we're stuck and how we wake up. which is, I've actually never described the fourth foundation that way, but that's how it's coming through right now. All of those foundations are the ways that we can pay attention, the ways that we can care and be aware, are always looked at from the teaching of the Buddha of the lens of inner and outer. That there's an inner process and there's the outer process, and that they are interdependent. So this resilience, every single time that we practice self-care, every single time we take care of our nervous system, even just now, taking a moment to make sure that you feel grounded, that you have a sense of your feet on the ground or your seat, wherever you're sitting. That we take those moments to take a deeper breath when things are hard and remember that there's enough air to breathe with what we're feeling. This resiliency cultivation that has to happen ongoing. I could give a whole talk on the Dharma practice of waking up through collective trauma, but we don't have time. So I'm going to say cardinal rule number 1 and number 2 and number 5 for practicing when we're in a reactive field of any kind, whether it's collective trauma or just a super stressed out meeting on Zoom. Cardinal rule number 1 is move and keep moving, so that we don't go into that freeze numb, which is the nervous system's last resort for survival. It's okay if we go into that freeze numb, we're going to. We're going through something we've never, ever gone through, and may we never have to go through it again this life. But we want to move and keep moving. So it's like, pressing your feet into the ground, pressing your hands into your thighs, even while you're just sitting here listening to me. Some of the things I say you resonate with, other things you're like, not so much. I say something, it sets you off. It's a setup. If I'm talking, we're going to have responses, reactions. It's so vulnerable. And so really, whether it's exercising, whether, it's outside, whether it's doing jumping jacks in your house, whether it's like brushing yourself off when you feel slimed, move and keep moving. Really keeps that awakeness available through a collective field that has never been in such distress and so reactive on this planet. We can meet this. Not easy. I'm not gonna lie. Every one of us knows it's not easy. But every one of us has been through not easy. No, we're coming from situations in our lives and the world that we live in that makes it not easy. And in personal ways and in systemic ways. Yeah. So when I think about feeling into what Joe said, it's funny for me, honestly, it was less about what he said. Like for me, Kamala's words so I'm speaking totally from my own experience. Yours was different. Okay. But Kamala's words really landed for me. Joe, it was more of a sense of being. And I feel like instead of quoting him, what I really want to bookmark from what I felt from him was a message of seeing inner goodness. Seeing inner goodness in himself. Seeing inner goodness in his family. Seeing inner goodness in this country across lines of difference. And then that commitment that I felt, which will be imperfectly manifested, and we all know it. But still, the commitment that I felt in that moment, that scene of inner goodness would move from that intention into action in the ways that he is capable of with his limited power in his limited conditioning. It's a work in progress. And I remembered back again to my late teens and the first time, and most of you all are actually from the SF area. So the first time that I heard Jack Kornfield quote that he has been quoting almost every Dharma talk for the last 50 years. O nobly born, you who are the sons and daughters of the Buddha, do not forget who you really are. And I just heard it as I was listening to the speech. It's like, we can't offer our best in this world if we're not connected to that. Not every moment, but some moments. And I also feel like for myself, I can't, like my capacity to connect, to cross lines of difference is severely inhibited when I'm not connected with that inner goodness, with that inner sincerity, which is so messy and imperfect and yet there. And to really, really acknowledge it and rest in it and move from it fearlessly. So just like, again, I'm just coming back to that wholeness of heart. I just feel so much joy and so much hope and so much grief and a little twinge of possible despair that could be fallen into in this moment. And it feels so whole. And so it really touched me that Joe Biden ended his speech with, some words from his spiritual lineage, his Catholicism, and remembering his son, Bo, who he's lost. And every one of us is lost. We've lost in our own lives. We've lost people in this pandemic. We have lost people in the AIDS pandemic. We have lost people and lost people and lost people. And so I'll share what he shared, and then I want to share a little bit more of a Dharma perspective on it. This is in the Christian tradition. So he says, I hope this hymn gives you some solace as well. And he will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, and make you shine just like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand. And as soon as I heard it, I remembered that really famous Rumi poem. Again, Sufi. It's so cross-traditional. Be grateful for your life, and your face will come to shine like a sun, and everyone who sees it will be made glad and peaceful. So, closing quote from Kamala. It was interesting because I knew I was going to be with you all this morning. When she said this line, I really called our community to mind, because she's talking about it as being the first woman in the office of vice president, but her message seems so important for all of us in the ways that our locations are marginalized. She said, but while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last. Because every little girl watching tonight sees that this is a country of possibilities. To the children of our country, regardless of your gender, our country has sent you a clear message. Dream with ambition, lead with conviction, and see yourselves in a way that others may not, simply because they've never seen it before. But no, we will applaud you every step of the way. And I just thought that's it. That for me is the whole spiritual path. Seeing what we have not seen before. Seeing what we have not seen before in our own hearts, our conditioning, and our awakening potential. And our awakening shining through like the sun. Seeing what we have not seen before. And then looking at our world and our personal relationships and our structures and seeing the possibilities of what we couldn't see before. And then applauding each other and screaming at the top of our lungs as every single one of us gives exactly our authentic offering, not better, not worse, just gives it with that spirit of generosity for the benefit of all. I have so much respect for our community, for this community, to be able to come and be a part of this community. And even within the community, the way that you all personally, interpersonally, and structurally offer the expression of the way that we want to live together. Just have tremendous respect for that and love. And I hope that even though we haven't been able to be in person, you haven't been able to be in person, it's like, may the strength and love of this community just stay so steady and keep growing. And I have so much trust and confidence that it will, because of what y'all have been through together. Whether it's your first time here plugging into something that's powerful like this, which keeps it fresh, and then especially those of you who've been around for a really, really long time. Thank you for your Dharma hearts and your community. Such an inspiration. Oh my gosh, I can't resist. One more quote. Am I allowed to end the talk and do one more quote? I love this quote. I've been reading this quote for years, and it's so right now. It's from Gandhi. Some of you know it. When I despair, I remember that all through history, the way of truth and love has always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time, they seem invincible. But in the end, they always fall. Think of it, always. Well, I don't see that as different than my own reactivity work, honestly. Oh, so huge joy to be with you. I really want to hear from some of you what your thoughts, reflections, how your spiritual path is shining through this time. Of course, questions. It's not like I know the answers, but we'll talk. Just love to hear some of your voices.
Thank you for your hopeful talk, Heather.
You're welcome. Yeah. Francis, please. Yeah. And please don't wait for me to call on you, because there's 2 screens, so I can't see everybody. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, Heather, thank you for your enthusiasm. It's wonderful.
Yeah. You're welcome. It actually comes out of, just to be straight. So I sat 2 months of retreat, mid-August to mid-October. I was evacuated from one of the fires day 1 of my retreat. And that really affected the retreat, not just in terms of evacuating. My house is fine, I'm here. But in terms of what I opened to. So that enthusiasm, that hope that's coming through me actually is coming through touching into some of the deepest despair that I've ever experienced in my life. And not just individual despair, but collective despair. So it just feels important to acknowledge that.
Hi, Heather. This is Bharadwaj. Thank you for that lovely talk. Can you maybe walk us through your journey where you've overcome despair and you fought those demons, internal and external? Where did you find your source of strength, and where did you take inspiration from?
Thank you for asking. I certainly don't think I could answer that in a whole way without giving a whole nother reflection. So I'll just see what comes through right now. I actually think that fundamentally, a big part of it is what I said at the beginning about holding things in wholeness. That's been one of my deepest spiritual commitments for as long as I can remember. So for me, that commitment, that intention, that spiritual call seems to allow my system to be able to touch into levels of difficulty, inner and outer, that I don't think I would have the capacity without that. That doesn't mean I'm not affected. I actually happen to come into this world with a highly sensitive nervous system and energetic body. I'm very affected. So another piece of how I could practice that way is, a couple of decades of training with the nervous system, with the energy body. Like I can't touch into the hardest places, especially if they're collective. Because from a Dharma perspective, none of it is ours fundamentally, but like some of it is really not ours. It's so big. So, I mean, I got knocked down. It was one of the hardest. So, I've sat over 3 years of cumulative retreat, and mostly long retreats, like a month or 2 or 3 at a time. So I've done a lot of retreat, and this was one of the hardest retreats. I just got knocked to the floor so many times with difficult emotions, with nervous system overwhelm, with, and just that despair of like, there's no way out of this. So I really need to do the nervous system practices. If people are interested in that kind of practice, you can go on my website. I have whole talks on it, anything on mindfulness of the body, guided meditations. I actually have a little COVID, list of short nervous system practices, 5 minutes or less. So you can just Google nervous system support. That's all free. There's the website. Somebody put it up. I just wanted to, I want us to have as much resiliency as possible. I want us to share our collective information for resiliency. So I'd say nervous system practice. Honestly, for me, the fundamental refuge of awareness itself, like the awakeness that moves through me. Without that, I couldn't have done what I did. I just couldn't have. So I have a very, very deep relationship with that. And then also in terms of external inspiration and support, like this was the first retreat I ever sat that I reached out. I didn't just reach out to my teacher. I reached out to some friends, a couple who are really highly skilled therapists as well as my friends, and, people who are deep in Dharma. I just said, I'm drowning. Like I need to connect. Isolation is not going to help. And I think that's a key point. Isolation is not going to help. Like we need to connect. We need the quiet moments where we can just, in a very, very short titrated way, feel the depth of the pain, but less is more. The titration principle is less is more. Drowning is not better practice. I had to learn this the hard way when I was in my early 20s. I thought drowning was better practice. It's not. So yeah, I guess I'm coming through with it, right? It's like, okay, fundamental kind of intention, commitment to wholeness, nervous system, less is more, deep connection to awakening, connecting, getting support. And then I'm also really inspired actually by history. So like, for example, the last presidential election, one of the things I did as a response was I started talking to all of the oldest people that I knew, the people in their late 70s, all the way through their 80s, and saying, you've lived through so much. Like, how did you get through the Depression? How did you get through the Cold War? How did you, what, like really mining the collective wisdom in our communities has been important to me. And then, honestly, for me, seeing Kamala standing up there, like that was such an antidote to despair. It's just like, okay, it cycles. And that was like my whole energy body felt like, oh, it cycles. And that's an insight into impermanence. It cycles. So that also was a huge antidote to despair, even though I know it's going to be a shit show. We're not done. And we're not going to be done when this pandemic is over. And it's okay. Okay. Enough. Something else.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Heather. Thank you.
Yeah. Excuse me for swearing. I'm a little more authentic on a Zoom screen. I'm just sitting in my house, and truth be told, I swear. Please, yeah, Cass.
You're in good company. Last night I was in Oakland, and there was this huge sign that somebody had somebody had put up that said, "Thank Black women." After listening to her speech, and it took me a while to warm up to the idea of Kamala because of just sort of the politically ambitious things that she had to do in California to get to where she is, I guess. But I really felt that she has risen to the occasion. And last night's speech was, I thought, really incredible. And I'm really happy that you quoted from it today. But it seems to me that this country owes a huge debt of gratitude to Black women in particular, who see the suffering, who experience the suffering and rise above it and keep it together and give back. And so I can't wait till we have if we can't have Beyonce as the president, I guess, I'll settle for Kamala.
I love it. And the other thing I really appreciate in what you shared, again, was the wholeness. So, we don't have to agree with all the policies or all the behaviors of any leader. And we don't, right? Any more than we do our partners. But still that it's, to me, it's that process of looking for the goodness, of including what's been left out. I just love what you shared because it really brought it out. Looking for the goodness, looking for what's been left out, and really bringing that in and celebrating it in the wholeness that it's incomplete, in the wholeness of what we've had to do to get to where we are. And so has she, and it's not all been great. And, that's true with anybody. Certainly I'm not suggesting that everybody needs to do this, but just inspired by what you said and how I share your feeling about honoring Black women and the role that they have in this country. I'd like to invite us to just take a moment to send our love, our metta, and our appreciation to Black women in this country. And if that doesn't feel authentic, send it to whoever you like, but to really take a moment to bear witness to that. And perhaps for some of us, also setting the intention to take this seed of metta and move it out into the world. To not just see with our hearts this marginalized community, but to see with our eyes, to see with our words, to see with our choices. And totally expanding it out yet further. So many communities, including our own, that have not been seen in their full brilliance and wholeness and power. May we be seen more and more and more. And may our seeing support that process so that we're part of it. And I also just want to be really clear in transparency when I say we. I'm joining the we from a position of woman and what I've gone through. Being for a long time the youngest woman teacher in our system and in a patriarchal system still. In the Dharma. Yes, the rest of the world, but in the Dharma. So that's where I'm weeing with you.
I have a question.
Please.
Do you think that women voters in particular heard something from Kamala that resonates and amplifies the conversation for them in a new way?
Thank you. I'm pausing because, I'm holding two things together. Like intuitively, something in me says yes. And then really clearly, the rest of my system goes, I can't speak for women voters. So I really have to hold that in wholeness, because I think there is an energetic of yes, but I'm sure it's not universal. And I can't speak for women voters. Yeah, but thank you for asking. It's a evocative question. Maybe it'll become clearer as we move forward. I don't know.
Thank you, Heather. I just wanted to sort of touch in on with a Dharma victory. On a daily basis, I read from Norman Fisher's Training Compassion book and Tara Brach's Radical Compassion books. I'm doing little snippets of it every day. And I really could not tap into compassion for the injured, suffering Donald Trump. I couldn't get there, and I felt like I was failing. As a good Buddhist, like I absolutely could not get it. And but then what has happened in the last 24 to 48 hours is I have family members who support him, and I saw these Facebook and Instagram posts from my own family, and I was like, my instant response was like such despair. Oh my God, how can this be? But then I did have a shift where I was like, I want to ask. I want to just be open to a really an open-hearted conversation and understand why. I don't know. For the first time, I feel like I had a compassionate shift. I could, only because it's my family, but
yeah. No, I so appreciate you sharing. I was doing a little sign language round of applause there, because it's huge. And this we'll end with this share, just because of time. But I really appreciate you bringing it in, because I almost brought that up, and then I kind of didn't have time, because it's been interesting in the last month in particular. So I work with 60 people individually ongoing from all over the country. And the amount of people in the last month who have said, and obviously, this is not representative of the country. This is representative of the people I work with. But the amount of people who have said, I just can't send metta to Donald Trump, and they're judging themselves. And, again, we can fill in any public figure, but right now we're talking about Donald. But we've all had it with other public figures as well, other leadership positions. And they're like, I just can't. And they're judging themselves and is my practice not working? What's going on? And literally, I found myself saying to every single person, I was like, I'm not even trying. The way that my heart would go. So true confessions of a Dharma teacher, right? I'm not even trying. The way my heart would go when my heart would start to move in that direction was not I'm going to try to force something that is not authentic for me in this moment. It would just open wider and move right into all the people who are suffering under policies that are not working for them, are not supporting them. And this sense of all of a sudden I could feel a wholeness of the relationality between the government leadership, including our ex-president, and the actual connection with the wider community and the pain. And then all of a sudden we became whole instead of just focusing on the individual. And then I could feel the love for the whole thing and the way it plays out. And then sometimes, it would move more into this sense of this is how reactivity plays out. And it's not different in me. It wasn't about sending love to somebody. Just this is what polarization and reactivity and fear and greed do in a human system. You give that human system power, you get what we've had. Your basic nightmare. Anyway, that was probably a little bit too politicized comment. Sorry about that. I'm trying here.
My name is Asa, and I would like to make a comment.
Please.
I'm glad of one thing. I have no hatred in my heart for Donald Trump. As a psychotherapist, it was very clear. He made it very clear many, many years ago that he's a psychopath. And my heart goes out to him. And I mean, I have no hatred towards Donald Trump at all. Because, see, I know that 5 million more people this time around voted for him. You know, there are sick people around. If a person chooses to marry someone who's a psychopath, well, guess what? You're married to a psychopath, and you're going to get everything you ask for. The Civil War was fought. Red and blue, for me, really just boils down to slave states versus, quote, free states. You know, we gave back the South their guns and what have you. You know, and 70% of the prison population is African American people. You know, the whole setup is broken for Black people. You know, Black men are the ones who are in prison, who was incarcerated, who are being shot in the back in the streets. But no, I would hate Donald Trump if he lied to me. I married him, and he lied to me, and I found out he was something different than what he said he was. No, he told me when we got engaged, he says, I can shoot somebody and you will still marry me, you know? And so, is that the person I want to marry? Then I marry him, and we married him. Mm-hmm. And so it's not his fault. It is not his fault in any way, shape, or form. It's just not. Mm-hmm. You know, when you have 70 million people voting for a racist, how could you dare say that, you know, you cannot condemn white supremacists? He's speaking for 70 million people, many of whom are relatives, our parents, our family, and our friends. That's the country we live in. We live in a very deeply divided and very white supremacist, racist country. And if you were to pull the racism out of this whole thing, Donald Trump probably would never exist. Thank you.
Thank you. Really, really appreciate the whole range of your experience and wisdom. And what a powerful way to close our time with that, with a huge perspective and the celebration of, as both of you just said, like, yeah, and we can hold it, see it in a bigger perspective, and care. But honestly, I would have rather just left it with you. My commentary at the end was so extra.
All right. Thank you, Heather, and thank you, everyone, for participating and being together. Now it's time for announcements. Donna is the Pali word for generosity, and we appreciate your generosity. A donation of 10 or 20 or more will really help us. We pay an honorarium to the Dharma teachers. We pay rent on the meeting space still at Bartlett Street. We put out a quarterly newsletter. And when we get back in, when COVID goes away, we'll be back at Larkin Street having dinners and all kinds of fun stuff. So please give generously. Any other announcements from the group? Nada. Okay. Heather, would you like to, do you have a dedication of merit, or would you like us to do our regular one?
Oh, I'd love to do the regular one.
Okay. All right, here we go. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thanks, Grisha. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you. So good to see you all.
Thank you.
Taking good care.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
Good to see you.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.